Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode. I'm here today with Jake Dester, the saxophone player known around New York City. You'll catch him on every block on Riverside playing and getting his tunes on. So, Jake, thank you for coming to the show, man. It's a blessing.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you. So, Jake, on the show, man, I like to talk about their blueprint, their life and the foundation to who they are and how to get to where they are today. So, first, let's start with where are you from? Your full name you want to, or your musical name, and your family foundation.
Okay, well, my name is Jake Dester, short for Jacob. I'm originally from Tulsa, Oklahoma. I grew up in a pretty non-musical family, and honestly, it wasn't like the most functional situation. And I mean, it's kind of complicated because, like, I started playing. I was always interested in music. I always wanted to play piano. And when my brother went into high school, he had a clarinet. He was playing in middle school, and I was like, I'm gonna learn how to play that. I'm gonna be better than him. He went into high school, stopped playing it, and then in 7th grade, it's a long story, I started playing saxophone to audition for the All City band in Tulsa, and ended up making it. And I kept playing saxophone through high school. Went to college for jazz saxophone performance, and yeah, been doing it.
So we're starting with saxophone. When did you realize, when you look at this instrument, that you actually wanted to do it? When was that first day for you? That moment?
Yeah, I don't know if I specifically wanted to play saxophone. I know that I wanted to play improvised music. And I already played the clarinet. I also started playing guitar when I was really young. But I always thought of guitar as a less, it was always secondary. And it always felt more like, this is for fun. It's not like a serious thing. It's like, for whatever reason, I was like, this rock and roll music is like, it's not the same kind of art, which is, I don't really feel that way now, but being a kid in school and like reading sheet music and just, I was like, electric guitar like isn't official in the same way, I guess. So I started learning to play saxophone like out of necessity. It's like I want to play jazz and improvise, and clarinet is not really common. I happened to be able to get a saxophone because I had a cousin who was way older than me, and he played saxophone in a high school band, and he hadn't played it in years, so kind of borrowed it.
Right.
And learned how to play, and it's Saxophone and I have had an interesting, sort of complicated relationship, but it's been steady with me for almost 22 years now.
Nice. And you being in a non-musical family.
Yeah.
And being that basically that outcast, that one guy that that wasn't really following family tradition. What was that like? For you.
I got a lot of resistance, kind of had a lot of doubt in the back of my mind most of the time. I think I still do, about whether or not this is a legitimate profession or a legitimate career path. I was always discouraged from like being a freelance musician. It's like, get a job, you need a plan B, you need something to fall back on. This isn't real work. It's like, on one hand, we'll support you in certain ways, but we will remind you that what you're doing is foolish. And it was kind of uphill. And I was fortunate to have a community through like the school band and through other musicians that I knew and older musicians that I met as a result of playing around town. They're like, this isn't the simplest or easiest path to take, but it isn't impossible, despite conventional wisdom, despite what your mother and father may tell you. It's doable, and it's been really surprising to me the ways that I have made it work. And the time, there's been periods where it really does work for me as a viable career, and there's been other periods where it's like, this seems impossible. I got to get some kind of like job situation, and I'm 34 years old now. I feel like I'm still kind of fighting this critic that's in my mind that's like, this isn't real, sort of fighting this imposter syndrome. And the more that I press against that, and I'm just like, that's fine, you're over here, like, that voice is never going to go away. But all of the evidence is telling me you don't have to listen to that voice, because you show up and play the saxophone and it brings joy to people and it adds beauty to the situation. And that's kind of what that created within me, is this fight for my own, I guess it's a belief, this fight for faith that I can do it. Not only that I can do it, but that I am doing it.
Yes.
And
Yes.
honestly, it's kind of helpful now to face so much criticism early, because now I'm able to recognize, like, that person has their own set of beliefs, that person has their own opinions, they're not something I can change. They're gonna walk by me and say some, mean shit to me while I'm playing in the subway or something. It's like, all right, that's not my problem. They want it to be my problem. Just keep playing.
But, it's like that one person, right, to walk by, but there's also 10 other people who got their phone out recording you.
Right.
But some reason that one negative comment always kind of offsets the positivity that actually goes around. So why do you think, as humans, that negative, one small negative, like a bad apple, ruins kind of the whole moment that you're actually supposed to enjoy? Why do you think that?
destruction is fast and easy. You can ruin a civilization with destruction. It takes a lot more to build something. And I think in that metaphor lies this thing. It's like, if you trip somebody while they're running a marathon, it's gonna impact their speed. It's gonna impact possibly their ability to finish. They may get injured, regardless of how many people are cheering them on. That one person is basically a terrorist, and I don't think, you get stronger, you get better defenses with practice. You become more resilient, you become more able to get into the flow and sort of block out what's going on around you, whether it's, a random person in the subway, or if you're on stage and somebody's heckling you. It's like, well, okay, they're making an attempt, or they're like making some kind of threat. And I think probably it gets easier. It's gotten easier for me, but that sort of spirit of destruction, it's just, how much damage can you take? How resilient are you to the damage? And how quick can you pick back up? Like, you kind of have to develop a sort of armor, because otherwise, and honestly, playing in the subway, playing in public in New York, like, that has given me such a deeper sense of, like, okay, that person said that negative thing. For some reason, I'm going to be thinking about it for a long ass time. But it doesn't stop me from picking up the horn and continuing to go. And I think part of that is like confidence and practicing and building up sort of a factual argument for why what I'm doing is not what that person says what it is. And it's easier for me to recognize, like, some people are deeply hurt and they want to destroy other people simply for expressing themselves. And even adding art to the public space. Or the craziest thing is when you're playing at a venue that's billing, it's like, this event is going to happen. The person walks in the door and they sit down and they're like, what are you gonna do for us? Like, it's just like a weird, it's like, we don't know you suck. It's like, hey man, why don't you like leave? You don't have to be here. It's like, go home. Yeah, I think people. It is the saboteur. It's the sabotage. It's the guy who, or the person. It's usually a guy. Let's be real. But that person, if they're successful in their sabotage, they can destroy the whole building or whatever it is. So, hey, look, a squirrel. Yeah, I don't know how much you're gonna edit this, so I'm kind of just.
You're good.
All right.
So, with that being said, have a strong mentality in this line of work is very important to continue to keep yourself motivated. So, how important is keeping in touch with your mental health while in this journey of a musician?
Mental health has been a real struggle for me most of my life. And at this point, for me to stay mentally healthy, I have to stay completely free of drugs, completely free of alcohol. I have to get physical exercise. I practice yoga. I practice meditation. I have to get a lot of rest. I have a therapist. I have a psychiatrist. I work really hard to create boundaries with people that are going to be toxic. Like, the list of people that I have blocked on social media is insane, because I'm like, I don't need that shit. Like, why would I continue to let that poison come in? And it's not always that someone is like, or it's not necessarily a person, because it's a relationship with some kind of thing. Could be a person who is extra critical, or has like done something really destructive or hurtful, or it could be like, hey, I don't want to support that business because, you know, I know that they don't treat musicians right, things like this. So it's creating boundaries, and it's allowing people in who are going to build you up, and sort of keeping the gate like shut, like for people that are like potentially gonna be toxic or limiting. And at a certain point, I mean, it's almost like the heckler, like you're talking about. Like, it's just, what are you gonna let in? And almost like it's almost like a valve. It's like, I can tolerate this much of this thing influencing my life, but beyond a certain point, it's gonna start causing damage. So mental health, I mean, it's really, really important. Everything from like who I talk to, what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what I'm eating. Staying hydrated, you know, just really, really, I think I'm particularly sensitive to all kinds of different influence and stimuli, so I gotta be really careful about it. And I also try really hard to keep people in my corner who know that and can relate to that, and we check on each other. It's like, hey, how are you doing? Like, I noticed you like posted this weird cryptic thing on your Instagram story. Like, are you all right? And being able to kind of recognize that sort of thing. It's like, that's weird. That's weird that you're doing that right now. And even like, God, there's this great Of Montreal song where he's like, I'm too depressed to answer your call, but like, I'm glad that you called me just to show that you care. I can't remember which song it is, but I'm probably butchering that lyric. But yeah.
So that really goes in effect of, really taking our time out of our busy lives to check up on people. check up on your friends, the people that cross your mind. Usually, it's people who cross your mind at that moment. So you're supposed to pick up the phone and call or text, like, hey, I just ran across my mind, or how are you doing? So with that, why is it important to really take out specific time out your busy life or your life in general, just to speak to your loved ones or speak to people that you care about yourself? Why is that so important?
I might start to cry, so that's the thing. But somebody who really understands you is rare.
Yes, true.
And everyone is dying. Could be today, could be 50 years from now, you don't know. So if you feel that connection with someone and you recognize each other and you validate each other, it's like even something as simple as like liking someone's post or some shit. It's like, oh, like it's just a slight, it's a really easy thing to do. Check on somebody. Because you don't know what people are going through. People often don't know what you're going through. I think most of the time people assume, Jake's doing fine. Internally I might be a fucking mess. Like it could be like mayhem in here. If I get a text from somebody that's like, hey, you want to go to this show with me tonight? I'm like, oh, there's a world outside of my crazy brain right now, like, and people want me to be a part of it, and I can do that for other people simply by having the presence of like, hey man, like,
simple.
Yeah.
So I know with that, because my brother, one of his best friends, committed suicide. And at the time he was at work, my brother was at work. My brother told me the story how it happened. His name was Cavante. Cavante was calling me, and it was like, hey, a lot going on right now. I just need someone to talk to. But at the time period while you were at, your boxes on you, you can't really go out to your phone, call, so you go like, hey, I'll just talk to you later, I'm at work right now, something like that, and just in that moment, he was in the car with a gun, in the middle of nowhere, and next thing you know, he committed suicide, but, there's a lot of stuff on his shoulders, that probably, people don't know about, because when I seen him, when we all hanged out one time, he was laughing, joking, having a good time, and I never thought, ask a question, have like a one-on-one. Like you got a party or at an event, you're just in a circle. Sometimes you can always pull something to the side, like, how's everything going in your life? How are you? What can I help you with? What are you trying to do? That I can assist you and be an asset. Some people have really never thought about things like that. At the time period, I didn't think we talking like that. Now, when I go to events, find one person, I just talk to them. Then after that conversation, I go to another person, one-on-one conversations, tunnel vision. Whole party's going on at one time, tunnel vision conversation. So I feel like stuff like that is very important. So that's good, man. So you came to New York.
I did, yeah.
And when I found you, I was walking on the train. I was going to a client's place, and I see that you playing a beautiful song. I was like, oh, shit, I gotta get this. This is perfect. This is a perfect moment. He was in tune with it. And, at that time period, of where you are today, what obstacles in the city of New York got to shape who you are today, you know, and where you're trying to go from here?
That's a big question. When I came here, I wasn't playing saxophone. I had committed myself to writing songs as like my primary musical pursuit. I didn't quit music, but I wanted to be in this different sort of world because I've always written music, and I feel like saxophone has kind of overshadowed that. And I was working jobs like one does, and at a certain point I was working this job where it was very boring. It was very early in the morning. I was by myself and I had infinite coffee, and so I'm doing like repetitive tasks, and out of nowhere I started hearing like jazz saxophone like in my mind, and I was like, for maybe like a year and a half up to that point, I didn't want to play saxophone. I had no interest in it, and this is kind of an obstacle, but also kind of like good fortune. I had a friend who had a saxophone, and she was like, hey, if you ever feel like playing, like, you can borrow this horn. And so I did when this started happening, and I didn't really have a plan. I knew I wasn't really trying to get into like the competitive jazz scene. It's very, at that time it was very daunting and kind of off-putting to me. So I started playing in the subway and making real connections with real people who weren't buying tickets to the jazz show. They were just there.
Yes.
And I started to realize it was possible, using nothing but saxophone, to communicate a song that the person hearing it doesn't even know the words to, and do it in such a way that it affects them positively to the point that they want to give you money for it. Like, it was an insane realization where I was like, wow, like, what? So I kind of took it upon myself to do that, and then I convinced my ex, who was a guitar player, vocalist, and she and I knew a bunch of the same songs. I convinced her to start doing it with me, and we sort of built our own thing, playing jazz for cocktail hours and corporate events and small but still kind of like upscale kind of stuff. And then we sort of started drifting apart. So that project like dissolved eventually. I was pursuing work with other musicians and started to realize, I found like a low-cost therapist. I started to realize that I had like a lot of issues that I just didn't want to face. And a lot of my work since that point has been like internal. And the biggest obstacle in New York City is me. Like, the biggest obstacle for me is me. And I'm trying to figure out, I'm getting better at it, but I'm trying to figure out how to get that guy to work so I can be a better channel for the art that I want to put into the world.
Yeah, get right on the spot.
That's the biggest obstacle now. I mean, even COVID, that was a big obstacle. There was no opportunity to play, whether publicly or on stage. The subway was definitely not an option. A lot of the gigs that would have existed were not viable. I learned to innovate. I learned to produce music at a higher level. Like, I had some pretty successful work doing that, but I also had to just do shitty jobs just to make a living. So it's really been, all I want to do is make music. Other things keep getting in the way. And the truth is, that's just what's going to keep happening. So I have to keep making music in spite of whether or not I'm working a full-time job, whether or not I'm in a relationship or I'm single. Who knows, maybe at some point I'll have kids. It's like, that's a whole nother thing. You know, it's might be diagnosed with some sort of horrible chronic illness. Like, I'm gonna have to continue to make music through whatever is the circumstance. New York has been a really tough teacher, but I'm pretty confident at this point, like they say, like, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. I think my concept of what making it is very different from what it was when I came in. And a big part of my challenge is accepting that. It's like, my experience is really different from most musicians I know. So what I make is going to be different. Who I collaborate with and in what ways is going to be different. Even this interview, like 99% of jazz musicians I know who are scholarly, trained in a music school, are never gonna set up with just like a saxophone in a box and play outside a train station or whatever. Like, I don't know why. I think New York would be it would feel much more alive if there was jazz on every street corner. And there could be, because there's tens of thousands of jazz musicians in the city. I don't know. It hasn't caught on yet, but a lot of the things I've done in my life, I'm like, I was doing that shit, and then somebody else does it later, and they're like, oh, it's so popular. And I'm like, I had already moved on. Like, anyway, that's another thing. I'm like accepting that at some point I may catch a trend, but it's like, I'm not living for that. I'm not living for like a break.
So, your words of wisdom, and how can people reach out to you for saxophone lessons? How can people reach out to you to be a big brother to them? You know, for mentorship and some life guidance. A lot of people use that. And you know, where people can find your music.
I'll show you. This is my saxophone case, because I'm out in public a lot. I don't know if the camera can get this. The camera seeing this?
Yep.
This is my handle. Everywhere. It's my name, my website, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter.com, YouTube, whatever else they invent. That's the thing. Yeah, DM me, I guess. However you want to do that.
And your words of wisdom to the world.
My words of wisdom to the world. You ready? Here's my words of wisdom. Be receptive. Be willing to receive what Earth, what humanity, what the universe is offering you. And take it and be grateful for it and accept that it's pretty much all you got. And if you aren't receptive to it, you're gonna go down a pretty negative path because you're gonna be trying to resist it all the time. But when you start to accept the things that are around you and you receive them and you're grateful for them and you're a steward of those things, your life begins to open up. Things get better. Won't be perfect, but progression is way more valuable than some sort of perfect ideal. That's a lot of words, but that's what I can say.
It's perfect, man. I appreciate you on the show. Next, I'll let you man play your sax, man. So.
Oh shit, we're still doing that today.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was great. That was wonderful.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time. But there's something really magical about like being in the subway or just being in public, but especially I have like my own spot. Like I like to play at the York Street F train station because it's like a huge, like cavernous, really long space. Everything's tiled and reverberates like forever. So every note you play has to be very intentional. It's gonna come back to you. And if it's not like, if it doesn't sound right, it's gonna come back sounding like pretty muddy and gross. Yeah. So playing my own music there, especially when you can really get cooking, like. Like throwing a bunch of notes out and really hearing this like wall of sound coming back all harmonized. That shit's cool. Makes me want to do like a cathedral tour.